Okay, this video is part 4 of how to write better, quotes and concepts. And basically, I got tons of these writing things. And this is really for somebody who wants to learn how to write. By the time we go through all these things, you'll have been exposed to most of the stuff related to writing. I read everything you could read that I could get my hands on, all the books, all the articles. And the quotes are kind of fun. Later on, I'll systematically go through different topics, but some of the stuff you find really useful, and I think, it's worth it to go through the quotes if you really want to learn how to write. Okay, so the first one is, we're going to talk about something called embodied simulation. So embodied simulation means that when you hear words, you simulate them in your mind, you envision them, and that's why you want to try to almost always write an active voice. So you say the concrete subject, like the dog, and then you have an active verb, chased, and then you have the subject, you have the object, the dog chased the cat, because that's easy to see in one's mind's eye. Also, you want to state things in a positive way, because the brain wants to perceive things in a positive way. What I mean by that is, don't say the counterfactual, the negative statement, because that confuses people, because they have to almost visualize the positive before they can visualize the negative. Just state it directly. So there was a guy by the name of Benjamin Bergen, and he wrote a book called Louder Than Words. And he has a good quote here. He says, embodied simulation shows that a negation slows down the reader because they initially mentally simulate the counterfactual positive and then have to negate it. So what that means is just say the thing. Don't say the negative of it. And I know I'm getting into little fancy terms there, but trust me, like if you read the Founding Fathers and all that stuff, they're going to constantly do that, and it's annoying, and you don't want to do that, okay, when you're writing. Unless you'll simply be aware of it. And if you're aware of things when you write, you can always do whatever you want because you know what you're doing. And that's a lot different than just doing stuff because you're clueless, okay? It's like the difference between being socially with it and socially clueless. It's the same thing as being with it as a writer versus clueless as a writer. Okay, Edgar Allan Poe here, he says, every plot worth its name must be elaborated to the denouement, to the ending, before anything be attempted with the pen. So if you're writing a short story, you have to figure out exactly what the ending is so everything builds to that. It is only with the denouement constantly in view that we can plot its indispensable air of consequence or causation, by making the incidents and especially the tone at all points tend to the development of the intention. Edgar Allan Poe. That which you mistake for madness is but an over-acuteness of the senses. So that's another strong point of Edgar Allan Poe. He would overstate things, be over the top. And a lot of times, great writers, great entertainers, they are over the top. That's partly why they're entertaining. Okay, now this is something from Jeff Gerke. He's a guy who writes books about how to write better, especially the context of writing a novel. But here's what he says. The thing that rocked my contentions about fiction was the repeated evidence that the best-selling novels could break every rule I found essential and violate every technique I found pivotal. High or low fiction craftsmanship didn't seem to make the slightest difference in how well a novel sold. That's a lot to drop on the head of a guy who has spent his career teaching fiction craftsmanship. If high fiction craftsmanship isn't the secret to making a novel wildly popular, then what is? I concluded that it has everything to do with whether the novel engages the reader. Now I quickly shift the focus to reader engagement. Yeah, so the book should be entertaining. People like a good story. We'll get to all that stuff in the future, but you should know about the hero's journey, about character archetypes. And when you get into more sophisticated writing, you're going to start getting into psychology because they go together. The psychology of what is entertaining and engaging to the reader. And other people have called the modern writing environment sort of, it's a competition for attention. Okay, so simply being aware of these things helps you to tune into them more quickly. All right, another guy who's written some nice books is called John Maxwell. And he's written a lot of stuff about communication and about business. I like the guy. He's a nice guy. So here's one of his books, Everyone Communicates, Few Connect. And so the best way to help people is to see the best in them. And that's true. If you're a coach or a teacher, kids need encouragement. Everybody gets criticized and beaten down a lot. So if you can try to build people up, that can help. The first rule of communication is to look for common ground. Yeah, see what you have in common with the person, and that's going to go into, there's a whole bunch of communication theory about that, and we're going to get to all that stuff later, the different communication styles and how that works. Talk at me, and you'll talk alone. Talk to me, and I'll listen. Talk about me, and I'll listen for hours. Yeah, of course, everybody's interested in themselves. That's normal. Your ear is your best reader. Yeah, read a lot of times, read the sentences out loud, and the what's good or what's bad will be obvious when you do that. Okay, Shane Black, famous American screenwriter. If you're doing something that involves an entire universe of characters, one way to unite them is to have them all undergo a common experience. And there is something at Christmas that unites everybody. It sets a stage within the stage. So yeah, that's why you'll see a lot of great movies. They'll be set around Christmas time, and it brings everyone together. So that's just a smart way to do things. Sometimes it'll be, other big events in life, a funeral or some other big event, but to get all the characters in one spot so they can talk and meet and get things going. Okay, this guy is James Scott Bell, and he writes and talks a lot about helping people to improve their writing. Again, he speaks from the point of view of writing a novel, typically. He says that it's good to write while walking around. You can dictate into a recorder and see how that goes. He said it works better if you're walking around rather than standing. Some people like doing that. You'll have a tendency to be repetitive if you're doing that. Avoid anything that takes away from the reader's experience of narrative flow. Is it make the story better or not? When you talk about an abstract idea, give concrete examples. Try to meet the reader's expectation. And good writing has a warm, helpful, informative, entertaining voice coming from the author. And there's been plenty of other writing experts have noticed that sort of holds everything together is author's voice. Like a friend talking to you, that makes everything make sense. And so a writer should write that way. Try to be yourself, find your own personality in writing, because then it'll be more natural. And especially in the beginning, be more positive. As the reader's more engaged and goes along farther in the book, you can have a variety of things. But in the beginning especially, be positive. That's true. Otherwise, people are less likely to continue with the reading. And try to be cheerful if you can. People like stuff that cheers them up. But you'll get into more complex emotions and things as the story goes on. James Scott Bell says, what sells well is a great story told well. Okay, so that's what you want, is be able to you got to have good information, and then you want to tell it well to be good. Okay, Annie Dillard, she's a good writer. Here's what she says. One of the things I know about writing is this: spend it all, play it all, right away every time. Do not hoard what seems good for a later place in the book or for another book. Give it all, give it now. The impulse to save something good for a better place for later is a signal to spend it now. Something more will arise later, something better. Anything you do not freely and abundantly spend will become lost to you. And so what she's right about there is basically, if you write a lot of books, by the way, I've written, I don't know, depending on how you count them, at least 15 books. It's that if you try to save it, it'll end up going nowhere. You'll leave it in a notebook somewhere, you'll never use it. So if you think it's good, use it for that book. You can always use it again later, but if you don't use it, you'll have a tendency to lose it. I got books full of notes that I never used, hundreds of them. So it's nice having a text file, then you can search it and find it faster. Once you've just left it in a handwritten notebook, a lot of times it's lost forever. Okay, here's a book from Neil Brennan called The Making of a Moron. And this is a pretty good book, a fun book. And here's what he writes about. I call this the marathon strategy. And what I mean by that is I think it's good to have the marathon strategy in life where you say, I don't want to just get an A in my writing class. I want to become a good writer. And that carries over to a lot of things. I don't want to just get an A in my Spanish class. I want to learn how to speak Spanish. I want to learn how to write in Spanish. I want to learn how to understand Spanish songs, okay? So what I'm saying about the marathon strategy is you want to just be good. You don't want to seem good. You want to be good. Because if you are, you'll keep on building. And I noticed that with like education. If you really want to learn biology, you'll keep on learning biology and getting better and better. And you'll just be in a better position for the next class versus if you just try to get a grade, then you're going to forget everything. So I knew that because I saw that in my own experience. I really wanted to learn biology. I really wanted to learn biochemistry. And the more time went by, the more I was just farther and farther ahead of my classmates because I was really trying to learn it. It was important to me. And so what I'm saying is the same thing with writing. If you really are trying to learn how to write, you'll be rapidly getting better. Okay, so here's a quote from The Making of a Moron. To be a good man and a good salesman is not easy, but I knew one who succeeded. If some rubbish was left on the counters, he told the customers that it was rubbish. If he could not supply what they wanted, but knew a store which could, he told them that too. The management was outraged. They allowed him to stay only under the closest supervision. At the end of the first year, his sales record was equal to the other salesmen. At the end of the second year, it was better. And at the time of this writing, he has the biggest sales sheet in the store. The management now treasure him. The reason for his success is clear. He can be trusted, and he has built up a personal following. He who was the world's worst salesman by sales theory actually sells more goods and helps more people and builds up more goodwill that is converted to more customers than all the experts. Yeah, so just be good and good things will happen. Not initially necessarily, but eventually. Okay, David Burns, he's a popularizer of cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, he's a Stanford guy. And the idea of by changing your perspective on something, you can make it less troubling to you, for example. And there's some good stuff in cognitive behavioral therapy. Okay, so here's what he says. What most people want is to be listened to be respected, and to be understood. The moment see that people are being understood, they become more motivated to understand your point of view. Okay, so his book Feeling Good is worth reading. It's one of the better psychology books. Okay, G.K. Chesterton, the great Christian writer, he says, the real great man is the man who makes every man feel great. Yeah, somebody who's big, they can sort of handle everyone else having their own success, having their own glory. It's the small-minded people that are always jealous and petty. So if you're lucky enough to be around a big-minded person, that's better. They'll let you be great. I knew that with some of my great athlete friends, that a lot of times they became better than their coaches, and their coaches were jealous of them. So that was nice. Everybody liked Dan Gable as a coach, or Dave and Mark Schultz, because they were so great that, that they could handle however great their athletes were. All right. You want to know how to paint a perfect painting? It's easy. Make yourself perfect and then just paint naturally. That's the way all the experts do it. And that's Robert Pirsig. He was the author of Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. And I learned a lot about writing from him. Go to bed early, and then you can wake up early in the morning and start writing so you get more time with your early morning brain, which is your best brain. That's a great book, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, by the way. Okay, John Cheever, a quote, I write to make sense of my life. And yeah, so a lot of times writing helps you figure something out. Like when you're really excited about a subject, that's a good time to write a book about it. When I wrote a book about how to write, rhyme, rhetoric, and logic, it was because I wanted to learn how to write better. And in the process of compiling all the files, you'll learn a lot, and then you have to organize them, make sense of them, categorize them, and all that helps you to learn it. Okay. The more you say, the less they remember. Anatole France. I think it was the Russian guy, Solzhenitsyn, who said, anything that adds to the truth subtracts the truth. So just say the truth and then stop right there. Don't. Okay, Eric Erickson, he's a psychologist. He said, the best way to transmit information is always a story. And I've heard other writers notice a story, our brain's just programmed to get stories. So you put something in the context of a story, people are much more likely to remember it. When somebody gives a talk and they tell a quick story about each case or each topic, it sticks versus these logical tables of data. They overwhelm our brain. We're not made for that. Okay, this is coming now from David Ogilvy. He wrote a very good book called Confessions of an Advertising Man. Okay, so he says, when you're on vacation, you should read a book every day. I assume you have already taken a speed reading course and can do 1,000 words a minute. So regardless of your rate of speed, and it depends what you're reading, you should be reading a lot, though. Just make it a habit. Read on the toilet. Listen to an audiobook when you're in the car. If you make it a habit to constantly read something, you'll read a lot more. And you'll find that everybody's got time. Everybody goes to the toilet. Everybody has to go to the bathroom. Almost everybody has to commute a little bit. Okay, talent is most often to be found among nonconformists. Conan Doyle wrote that mediocrity knows nothing higher than itself. My observation has been that mediocre men recognize genius, they resent it, and feel compelled to destroy it. So basically, I think that, when somebody's great, they do generate flack, and so they just have to deal with that. And yeah, the great people, they're going to be nonconformists. So that's why when you hear everyone else says, oh, that person's an asshole or she's a bitch, a lot of times don't immediately rule that person out. It might be true, but give them a chance, because a lot of times they'll be good people to know. They'll be interesting. Okay, there are very few men of genius in advertising agencies, but we need all that we can find. Almost without exception, they are disagreeable. Do not destroy them. They lay the golden eggs. Few of the great creators have bland personalities. They are cantankerous egoists, the kind of men who are unwelcome in a modern corporation. Yeah, the guys who are great, I know all the great wrestlers, are really stuck up, because they know that they have to go against, somebody tough like the Russian, Gene Mills. What did he say? He said, I'm going to kick the shit out of the Russian. I mean, if you have to think that way to go out there and be able to crush the Russian, in wrestling tournament, you have to think that way. And if you're not able to think that way, then you're probably not able to do it. And Gene Mills did. He crushed the Russians. He won the Tbilisi tournament, Okay, Flannery O'Connor, the American writer from the South, she said, I have found from reading my own writing that my subject in fiction is the action of grace in a territory largely held by the devil. Okay. Another thing is onomatopoeia. Tom Wolfe is great at that, picking up on the sounds of words. And just be aware in your everyday life of sounds. If you're thinking about words and writing, you'll notice things, and everything you notice, put it in one of your notebooks, and it might be good material for some future writing projects. For example, when I heard the word arugula, like arugula salad, I'm like, that sounds like the submarine dive sound, arugula, So just by paying attention to things and looking for ideas for writing, you'll pick up a lot of stuff. Okay, now this is from William Zinsser. He wrote a book called Writing Well, a very good writing book. He wrote a couple other books. I read his other books. They're all good. And he a lot of times writes about writing memoirs and stuff. He's an older guy, but here's some of his thoughts. You should write the book that you want to read. It's the only way you'll write something good. Write to please yourself, and the deserving audience will get it. You are writing primarily to please yourself, and if you go about it with enjoyment, you will also entertain the readers who are worth writing for. So, yeah, that's basically pretty much it. You have to be interested in what you're doing for your book to be interesting. And then you got to tell people close to the beginning, or at least give them some type of indication why it's worth their time to read your book. Readers want to know very soon, what's in it for them. Most adverbs are unnecessary. Most adjectives are also unnecessary. Yeah, good prose a lot of times is pretty brief and concise. Don't hedge your prose. Prune out adjectives that dilute your prose. Don't be a little bit annoyed or kind of annoyed. Be annoyed. Every little qualifier whittles away some fraction of a reader's trust. Readers want a writer who believes in himself and what he is saying. Don't be kind of bold. Be bold. Okay, that's from William Zinsser from On Writing Well. Yeah, people who are funny. A good comedian, a good entertainer, they're opinionated. The modern world kind of like trains people to be stupid and to lack the ability to judge things. And all this stuff about tolerance, a lot of it's BS. You want to have a solid sense of what you think is right and what you think is wrong, what is good, what is bad, what is mediocre. Those are all signs of an intelligent person that makes judgments. You have to make judgments all day long. So don't fall into pop culture. Pop culture is designed for generating minimum wage idiots and losers, okay? If you want to be good, you've got to be confident and driven. All right, Tom Wolfe. People are motivated by sex, status, fear, and greed. Every moment we are concerned with status. Okay, that's Tom Wolfe, the great writer. John Steinbeck. The free exploring mind of the individual is the most valuable thing in the world. All right, yeah, and it's basically the free exploring mind. That's the one that discovers almost everything. Most of these big corporate pushes for research and stuff, they're a big joke, okay? Look at cancer research. Since 1970, they spent how many countless billions of dollars, and they discovered almost nothing, okay? It's a big joke. And then you got some, lady, Ruth Heydrich, running marathons, going vegan with McDougall, and she's cured of metastatic breast cancer, okay? And the same thing with Janet Murray Wakelin, okay? And plenty of others. So I'm just saying is don't be too impressed by billion-dollar projects. They're usually BS for corporations trying to make money off of people. Okay, and individuals have done lots of great things. All right, next one is Carl Hiaasen, an American writer. He says, the greatest sin for a writer is to be boring. Yeah, you got to keep it entertaining so the reader keeps reading. If they don't keep reading, what good is it if the book gets good later? And who do you want to listen to? Somebody who's entertaining and funny. All right. And that's what I also think is funny. Somebody like Andrew Tate, who everyone's like tries to say, oh, he's so bad. He's entertaining. He's funny, okay? He's better than all these like conformist milquetoast people put together if you want to have entertainment. And he just says some useful things. I mean, I don't always agree with the guy, but he's entertaining. All right. I mean, he's an idiot. He eats bad diet and he smokes. Okay, George Box. All models are wrong, but some are useful. Yeah. A lot of times you asymptotically get closer to the truth, meaning that if this is the truth right here, you just come closer and closer to it with each subsequent metaphor, but that's what you try to do. Okay, Herbert Spencer, he was a guy, a little bit of a pro-Darwinist from the 1800s in England. He had some good points on writing nonfiction. He said, begin with what is known and proceed to the unknown. And, here's an example of that, the Bible quote from Galatians. Who Whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he reap. Okay, so that's continuity and chronology. Begin with the old, proceed to the new. Yep, sort of like start with the known, go to the unknown. Begin with the concrete, proceed to the abstract. Two people are better off than one because they can help each other to succeed. That's Ecclesiastes. Okay, so that's all pretty logical. A lot of this just comes natural. If it sounds right, feels right, then it's probably pretty good. Okay, William Faulkner, he's a Southern writer from America. He's okay. You know, he's a little bit of a babbler, but he's okay. He does have a little bit of good stuff. William Faulkner says, good to have momentum in your writing. When my horse is running good, I don't stop to give him some sugar. Yeah, and that's again why you want to write in the morning. In the morning, you're going to be smart, and the words will come a lot faster to you. All right, Raymond Chandler, he's an American writer, again, sort of like these thriller novels and whatnot. The faster I write, the better my output. If I'm going slow, I'm in trouble. It means I'm pushing the words instead of being pulled by them. Raymond Chandler. Okay, now here's Tucker Max. He's an American writer who became very popular. He started out just goofing around, trying to make his friends laugh, and he ended up writing some pretty popular books. And here's what Tucker Max has to say. But here's the thing about being honest. All liars hate you for it, and most of the people in the world are liars. If you have the courage to be honest, even a little bit, all those people will hate you for it, because their lie is reflected in your honesty. Oscar Wilde wasn't kidding when he said, if you want to tell people the truth, make them laugh, otherwise they will kill you. And so, yeah, that's true, that basically what gets people pissed off? What do people get in trouble for? They get in trouble for telling the truth. You know, most of the sort of standard conventional statements on most things, from nutrition to countless other things, they're all lies. There's this giant narrative of gaslighting to trick the entire public into becoming a broke, clueless chump. And so you have to work out of it. And somebody who sort of like helps the public and tells them the truth, those people don't get any support in general. So Tucker Max continues here. The problem with reading is not reading. It's that almost everything out there sucks. For so long, publishing was run by a cartel of snobby, pseudo-intellectual failed writers, and the resulting output has reflected not what the market wants, but what they think the people are supposed to read. Yeah, so that's very true. A lot of the publishing companies, and nowadays more and more stuff is published online or self-published, but it used to be that the publishing companies were primarily run by companies that wanted set patterns of writing. And anything interesting, they wouldn't publish it. And that's why so many books, they're just terrible. Jordan Peterson has a quote, marketing is difficult. It's incredibly difficult to monetize creativity. Yeah, that can be very true. Okay, here's something by Bob Bly. He's a guy who does a lot of freelance writing. He says, positioning demonstrates how the product differs from the competition. In every book proposal, I now include a strong statement that defines the book's position in the marketplace. Draw an analogy between the proposed book and something that will form a familiar, favorable image in the editor's mind. Our proposal called our book The Strunk White of Technical Writing, which instantly communicated the key appeal of the concept. Okay, so Bob Bly, he writes a lot of stuff about writing. Okay, Nietzsche. Art is the proper task of life. Creating is a great salvation from suffering. And I think that's true in many ways, because in life you sort of end up somewhere, and then you really can't change it that much, because if you try to change it, you'll cause all kinds of new problems. And then you don't want to necessarily do that. So what ends up happening is you're stuck. And when you're stuck, what are you going to do? You know, you can mope about it, you can watch TV, or you can say, well, I'm stuck in this social situation, this economic situation, but I really like, whatever it is, making music, writing books or whatever, then do that. And that'll at least make your free time something better, something useful, something good. Okay, so that's it. And anyways, hope that was useful.